Thank you. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gents. Or if you're in Israel, good evening. Diane. All right. This week's Parsha is Vayishlach. Vayishlach means and he sent. What happened at the end of Parshas Vayetze was the beginning of the establishment of the Jewish family. Yaakov married Rachel and Leah, had 11 out of the 12 sons that would make up the 12 tribes, plus the daughter Dinah. If anybody has any questions on what I just said, please. I'm short. I don't know why. You know, I actually may have. No. I have more here. Let's see. I have more here. I have a few more, not too many. I have a few more. Pass out whoever you can. Sure, I don't know why, but yeah. Okay. Everyone else has whoever wanted? Okay. All right. Did everyone get a Parsha pack? Whoever wanted one? Great. Okay. So Lavan ends up trying to get him to stay longer. And he does stay for a while and amasses tremendous wealth, because even though Lavan tried different tricks that he should not be able to get anything, bottom line is God helped that the animals that Lavan chose, which he kept on switching, were the ones that became very fruitful, and he had a lot of animals, and it was time for him to leave. God told him to leave, and he realized it was time for him to leave, and he left to come back. But he has a little bit of an issue. What's his issue? He's heading back to his homeland, to the land of Israel. But what's the problem? His brother Esav, where's he at with him? So he decides to let Esav know that he's returning. The oral tradition says different opinions. One opinion wasn't a good idea to let Esav know he was coming. Leave sleeping dogs lie. Why are you waking Esav up to let him know you're coming? That's a problem. Don't. Maybe he won't make a big deal out of it. That's one opinion. The other opinion is, now's a good time to come. Yitzchak is still alive. The father's still alive. Maybe that would temper Esav's anger a little bit. So that's just two interesting approaches to this issue. And what does he do? He sends him a message and he says, don't be upset about the blessings, because what were the blessings initially? The blessings were that God will give you from the fat of the land and have much grain. And Esav, and Yaakov is telling Esav, I have a lot of animals, but I don't have real estate. You know, the joke about the Jewish guy, Texan, meets two big Texan guys, and one of them says, I got the Lucky Star Ranch. It's 50 acres, and it takes to get from the front door to my house, you need a car. That's how big my ranch is. And the other guy says, well, I have the red shoehorn ranch, and it's 250 acres, and you know, it's huge. And then the Jewish guy, and says, "What do you have?" He says, "I only have 2 acres." 2 acres? What's it called? Downtown. So Yaakov is telling him, I don't have the land that what Yaakov promised me. I have animals, but I don't have the land. Now, and I'm a Vayagar, and the word Vayagar has the word ger in it, which means a stranger. I'm still a stranger. It's not like I was settled and I have my own land and everything is set. I don't, so don't be upset. Now, in Lavan Garti, I lived with Lavan. Now, Garti, if we take the letters and we mix them up, spells a number, Taryag. Anyone know what Taryag is? Taryag is 613, and you know what that is? The amount of commandments. That is correct, the amount of commandments we have. So Yaakov is telling Esav, in Lavan Garti, and as Rashi writes it, V'taryag mitzvah shamarti, and I kept the 613 commandments. So don't think that the reason why I didn't get the fulfillment of the blessings is because I didn't live an observant life. I didn't live a good, a moral life. I kept the Torah. I kept the commandments. Remember, for those of you who are not familiar, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet have numerical value. So Garti, even though the letters are in different order, it doesn't make a difference. This spelling is still Taryag, which is Taf is 400, Resh is 200, that's 600, and Yag, Yud is 10, and Gimel is 3, that's 613. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Parsha facts, you'll see that how many commandments in the Parsha? 1. Which number out of the 613? The third of the 613 commandments is in this week's portion. So he's saying, I kept the Torah and the mitzvahs. I'm sorry?
What was the other word in?
Taryag?
The first word. What does it mean?
Garti, I lived. But if you mix the numerical value is still the same. Yeah, no, that's fine. It's in the verse in the text. Now, by the way, this is a very important concept, that he's living with a Lavan, and he didn't weaken his resolve and didn't weaken his he didn't allow the environment to impact him. So the angels come back and say, not your good news, Yaakov, that we came to Esav, your brother, as a brother, but he's coming to you as Esav. We were reaching out to him as a brother, but he's come to us as Esav. He's coming with 400 soldiers to attack you. All right, so Esav is responding with 400 soldiers. Now, I just want to digress a little bit. For some reason, people have a hard time with Yaakov dressing up to get Esav's blessings. And as I mentioned, I'll repeat it again. Esav was the one who, A, didn't deserve the blessings because he wasn't righteous, and B, he sold the birthright to Yaakov. If a murderer came in here looking for somebody, and the woman he was looking for was hiding in the kitchen, and he said here, where is she? If you say she ran out the other door, are you a bad person because you lied? Right, that's not called a lie. Telling them to go the other way to save the person, that's the right thing to do. So again, you have to understand that we can't live in absolute. We live in absolute good and wrong, but you have to know what the right and wrong is in each situation. So he is deserving of it. What's Esav's response? He wants to kill him because he got the blessings. Not exactly a righteous. There's a story that popped into my head to share with you, which to me is a very powerful, moving story. A man is walking with his son, and it's post World War II, and a man passes by, and the father acknowledges him, and just like sort of nods his head, and they keep on walking. And the son asks, "Who was that man?" He says, "That was my best friend before World War II." Son is like flabbergasted. That's your best friend before World War II? How come I never heard his name? And how come you just acknowledged him, but that was it? Hold on to your seats for this one. To me, it's greatness. He says, you have to understand that before World War II, I had a family. And I had papers that they were non-Jews and we could have escaped with them. And I told my best friend about the papers, and he took them, he stole them and used them for his family. Yeah, Aryans, that's the, and he used them for his family. And my family was killed during the war. Okay. So the son was flabbergasted. He said, I didn't know you had a family before the war, and I didn't know that he took your papers, and you acknowledged him, but you didn't kill him now. And the man said to me something very amazing, to him, very amazing. He said, I shouldn't have told him where the papers were, because I gave him a test that was too difficult for him to overcome. This is a man who's not one of the forefathers. You know what I'm saying? He had every right to be very upset with this man who took his papers to save his own family. But he what? He blamed himself a little bit and realized that, you know what? I put him in too difficult of a situation. To me, it's a very powerful story, but contrast to what Esav's response is. He took my blessings, I'm going to kill him. You know what I'm saying? And here, this man took some responsibility himself for what happened. And obviously he lost his family, you know, terrible tragedy. But just to me, it's a very, very powerful story of being able to look at a situation objectively and beautifully. All right. So Esav is coming. Now, how is Yaakov going to respond? So Yaakov has fear and distress. Why is he having fear and distress? Anyone have an idea? He knew what's coming, 400 men with Esav to fight against him. Hello? I have time. And therefore, what may happen? Number one is he could be killed. But why the fear and distress? And the answer is he's afraid that he or his people could be killed. And he's also afraid that he may kill. What's wrong with that? You're allowed to defend yourself if someone's coming to attack you. But Judaism is not pacifist. We don't love doing it, but we don't want to, but if we have to, we will. And this reminds me of two lines from Golda Meir. Golda Meir was the prime minister of the state of Israel many years ago. And she said one thing, she said, peace will come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate us. Peace will come when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us. Very powerful statement. And the second one is, when peace comes, we will perhaps in time be able to forgive the Arabs for killing our sons, but it will be harder for us to forgive them for having forced us to kill their sons. Again, very powerful ideas here. She's saying, yes, these are the two things Yaakov is worried about. Number one, that he shouldn't be killed, but number two, that we will have to kill. We're allowed to, and we have to, but that doesn't mean we want to. Again, two powerful ideas. Everyone get the point? Where? So how does he prepare? So he prepares by doing three things. Number one, he prepares a present for Esav, trying to appease him. Number two, prayers. And number three, preparing for war. All three of the above. A gift, prayer, and preparing for war. Malchus, you had a question?
No, I said preparation.
Yeah. There was an interesting story about prayer. Times of Napoleon, the Jews of Jerusalem, someone was praying at the wall, and he saw 5 white letters, Aleph, appear, and he didn't know what they meant. The next day, his fears were, the Pasha, the Turkish ruler of Jerusalem, decided that all Jews living within 10 blocks of the Western Wall had to vacate their homes immediately, and not waiting for the Jews to comply, the Pasha soldiers began looting the Jewish homes. Again, this is way before 1967, Napoleon, okay? The Jews were living in Jerusalem at the time, Gesundheit. And Reb Mordechai was not afraid, and he prayed to heaven, and his prayers gave him added incentive to persevere. He says, don't give up hope. And the next very day, the unexpected happened. Reb Mordechai received instructions to present himself to the Pasha. The Pasha said, I have just received word that the army of Napoleon is approaching. I'm desperate. If Napoleon comes, all is lost. My only hope rests with you. You must pray to your God not to let Napoleon take over the city. And then Reb Mordechai said, how do you expect me not to take over the city if you're ordering us to stay away from the Kotel, from the Western Wall? So the Pasha revoked his original decree and allowed them to pray. And the city was saved because of the prayers. So prayer is an old an old method that we use all the time. But at the same time, you can't just pray, you have to do something. You have to be prepared as well. And what is Yaakov's prayer? On page 172, it says he talks to God, not say, hey, God, you promised me you're gonna protect me. He doesn't say that. He says, I am diminished from all of the good that you've done. Yaakov has humility to say, maybe I used up all my merits. You promised me you're going to protect me, but maybe you did so many good things to me. Maybe my spiritual bank account is dry. Can't assume that automatically everything's going to be peachy. So he has humility before God, doesn't expect anything, and is grateful. We mentioned on Shabbos, we are called Yehudim, Jews, Judah, from Yehuda, when technically we could be called, the Yehuda is one of the tribes. We could be called Ruvanim, from Ruvain, or Shimonim. Why are we called Yehudim? Because Yehuda, she named him Yehuda because she was grateful to God. We have to be always grateful to God. That's why we're called Yehudim. And what's his prayer? Save me from my brother, from Esav. Now we know the brother is Esav. So why is it saying, save me from my brother, from Esav? Because there's 2 problems with Esav. Problem number 1, when he acts like Esav. How does Esav act? He's a murderer, he's a killer. But then there's another problem with Esav, when he acts like my brother. What's the problem there? What's the problem when Esav acts like a brother?
Friends you, maybe it would influence you or.
Correct.
Sharing about the best.
You could, the problem is assimilation. Take a look at America. American Jews were exceptionally comfortable in the United States for many years. We feel safe, we feel comfortable. All of a sudden, October 7th woke people up. You know what? Things are not as peachy as we thought. Things on the universities are not as peachy as we thought. What do you mean? I'm a student like anybody else. I'm secular. I don't do anything. No. You're a Jew. So Yaakov is praying he be spared from Esav as his overt enemy and also as the covert enemy. I'll share a story with you, which is a little bit of an odd story, but it's a powerful one in a certain sense. There was a man I know who used to live in Los Angeles who went to work, who had a business, and he traveled to Europe. And one of his non-Jewish business associates asked him if he could speak to him privately after work. He said, sure. And he said to him, I was raised by a Nazi father, and he hated me. He hated me. And I never knew why till I found out much later in life. What had happened was there was a train going through the train station in Germany, and a baby was thrown out the window of a train that was going to the concentration camp, and my mother caught me. And she decided to raise me as her own. And my father assumed that I was Jewish, and therefore he hated me all of his life, treated me terribly. So the man said, I want to know if I'm considered Jewish. How do you rule, ladies and gents?
If his mom is Jewish, he's Jewish.
We don't know if his mom is Jewish.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So the man told him, look, the fact that you were thrown out of a train, the Jews were not the only people being taken to the concentration camps, the gypsies, the this, the that. It's not really enough of a proof. And the man did tremendous research trying to find which train was going where and when. So it's a very sad story in a sense, because he lived a difficult life with his dad because the father assumed he was Jewish. He didn't know anything about Judaism, didn't look Jewish, didn't anything, but he lived that way, and the man told him, look, you have to ask the rabbis about it, but I don't think that qualifies. So
is there a blood test or something?
No, there's no blood test you can take. No, Jews come from all over the world. So my daughter at the time was a teenage girl, and she had a very interesting perspective at the time. And it's going to be shocking. It'll shock you a little bit. But she said to me, Ta, why would a mother do that?
To save your child.
If the child's not going to be raised Jewish, what's the point?
Human being.
Okay. That's what she said at the time. You don't know who is going to save the child. What's the point? The child's not going to be raised Jewish. Now, I discussed this with my daughter, who, thank God, has a beautiful family now, and she acknowledges what you said, that she understands now as a mother why the woman would throw the baby out to try to spare the child. But the thought process of just thinking, why would she want to save the child if the child's not going to be Jewish. That's a very interesting perspective for a teenage Jewish girl. It's a powerful, powerful idea. So Yaakov sends lavish gifts to Esav, and he, at the same time, also separates the camp to make so he says if they attack one camp, the other camp will run away. If he attacks one camp, the other camp will be spared. Now, this is an interesting idea, and this is really prophetic, what the Torah tells us, that the bottom line is we may suffer tremendous losses, but the Jews will always survive. There's a famous quote from Mark Twain that I'd like to read with you. Mark Twain, famous author, and he writes the following: if the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 0.25% of the human race. Suggest a nebulous puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallest of his bulk. His commitment to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also very out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in the world in all ages, and he has done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and excused for it. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, and faded in dream stuff and passed away. The Greeks and Romans followed and made a vast noise, but they're gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burnt out, and they sit in twilight and have vanished. The Jew saw them all, survived them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert but aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Powerful lines from Mark Twain. And the answer to his question is because the Torah and God are eternal, and the Jewish people are all connected. And therefore, that's why we're still around. So Yaakov said, I'll split up the camp. And with that, there'll be a surviving camp. So he's traveling, and Yaakov is alone in his travels. And what happens was the angel of Esav attacks him. And they get into a fight all night long. And the angel can't defeat Yaakov, but he bangs him in his leg and injures him. And in the end, what ends up happening is he can't defeat him, and the angel has to go pray to God. It's the angel's turn to pray. And he says, let me go. And Yaakov says, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. And Esav's angel has to bless him and calls him, your name is not going to be Yaakov alone, it's going to be Yisrael, Israel. That's why we are the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. And the land is Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. So this is a very interesting idea. Now, the question some of the commentaries ask is, why was the angel attacking only Yaakov? How come there wasn't an attack on Avram or on Yitzchak? And that deals with what each one was their prominent attribute. Avram's prominent attribute was chesed, loving kindness. That's a beautiful thing, but that's not such a threat to the nations of the world. Yitzchak's was avoda, service. What was Yaakov's attribute? Torah. He was a man of the tent. He studied Torah. And Torah, that's the problem. And it's interesting, coming to the United States, there were two different groups of people that came. There was the groups, the non-Orthodox groups that opened up beautiful synagogues and temples. And the Orthodox that came and they opened up places to study Torah. And it really, the rest is history, because many of those temples are not around, or some of them, depending on the neighborhoods, are being sold to either, God forbid, a church, or sold to Orthodox people to make a synagogue out of it. But the study of Torah, as a matter of fact, the Nazis were against the Talmudists. I know someone in the neighborhood has a picture of their grandfather that they got out of the German newspaper before World War II. And I said, how in the world did you get a picture of your grandfather in the German newspaper? He says, because he was walking with a beard on the street and they took a picture. It says, there's still Talmudists among us. This is pre-World War II. It was like an expose. There's still Talmudists alive. I know another family who the Germans came into his house and they saw the Talmud and they went crazy. The Talmud is the oral Torah, the volumes of the oral Torah. They took it and they threw it out the window to destroy it. So the survival of the Jewish people is because of the study of Torah. And interestingly enough, the banging of the foot represents support of Torah. Jewish schools always, and Jewish institutions, religious institutions always have to struggle to make ends meet financially. And that's part of what the angel did. If I can't defeat Yaakov, I'm going to make it difficult to support him. Damage us, but never destroy. Yes, question.
It seems like that may be the answer to why the mother threw her child out, because even if he was raised non-Jewish, he has this immortal Jewish neshama within him, and sooner or later that will become a flame.
It's wishful thinking, and I wish it were that easy, because unfortunately we see a lot of Jews assimilating and not having that spark being reunited. But like I said, my daughter, in retrospect, understands it now, but the hope was not necessarily a good hope, because there's no guarantees. It depends who it's going to be, who the kid's going to be raised with. I mean, how many Jews have assimilated? The United States is 50-60% of if not more, a percentage of Jews are assimilating, and they're not being ignited. There are rare cases, there are beautiful cases of people who were blessed at the Jewish Learning Exchange to have Jewish people that's being awakened in them. But there's no guarantees in that. I wish, but there's no guarantees. But the chinuch does tell us that the prohibition of eating the sinew that from the leg of the kosher animal is to remember that the Jewish people will survive. Now, interestingly enough, why did the angel have to leave then? He said because he wanted it was his turn to say praise to God, to sing a song to God. Wait a second, which angel is this? It's Esav's angel. And this is a very important Jewish idea that's different than Christianity, which is Christianity talks about the devil and God, and there's the two fighting each other. But in Judaism, the devil isn't a separate entity. The devil is really working for God. And his job is to try to trip us up, to try to help give us a test. Are we going to mess up? Are we going to make a mistake? And that's why Satan was trying to defeat Yaakov. He couldn't defeat him. That was the time when he went to go say, to sing a song. It's interesting, by the way, because Yaakov asks him his name. And you know what the angel says? Why ask me my name for? What's the significance of that? Because the name, the Hebrew name of a person is their essence. Satan doesn't have an essence. Why not? Because he is there to make you trip and me to trip us up many different ways. He's a chameleon. He changes depending on what it is. What's your issue? Your issue is not studying enough. I will give you distractions. You'll find great video games to be busy with so you don't study enough. What's your issue? Anger? I'll put you in difficult situations where you blow your fuse. What's your difficult issue? Keeping kosher? I'll give you this great non-kosher restaurant near your place. He constantly evolves, even forget about for different people. For the same person, he could evolve in many different ways to make many things tempting to the person. So he doesn't have a name because he's always trying to do something else to undermine a person from doing the right thing, which is a very important idea. So Yaakov is healed the next morning, but we still have the prohibition of eating the sinew from the leg of the animal, which that's what the butcher takes out. Finally, Esav comes and meets Yaakov. And according to one of the opinions, when he greets Yaakov, he wants to bite his neck. That's why the word that he kissed him in the Parsha, you'll see has dots in it on top, representing Esav's teeth. If you want, I'll show it to you where it is later. Now, Esav asks Yaakov, you sent me this lavish gift. I don't need it. I have plenty. And Yaakov says, I have everything. What's the difference between I have plenty that Esav said and I have everything that Yaakov said? New Jeopardy music, yeah. Again, Yaakov says, I have everything. Esav says, I have plenty. What's the difference? What Yaakov has is sufficient. It's enough. If it's if it's much, if it's little, I have what I need. God gives me what I need to serve him. Esav says, I have plenty. I don't mind more, but I have plenty. It's a big difference in attitude. Esav meets Yaakov and he sees his family and the animals, and he says, what is all this to you? What's all this to you? And what is this question on a deeper level? He says, wait a second, we had a deal. In mom's tummy, we had a deal that I would get this world and you would get the world to come. So if you're a world to come guy, what do you need? Wives and kids and animals. And Yaakov gives two-part answer. He says, number one, these are gifts that the Almighty gave to me. He realizes it's not his own, it's from Hashem. And number two, he says, these are the things I need to serve God with. These are the things I need to serve God with. Because this world is not made to live on a mountaintop in Tibet and contemplate your navel and just live a spiritual existence. It's to live in the world with work, with money, with things you have to do, and at the same time, raise it up to a spiritual level and use it for good things. Remind me at the end to tell you a story, okay? It's a beautiful story for that. So Yaakov tells Esav, so Esav said, let's go together. And Yaakov says, you go ahead. Why is he going ahead? He doesn't want Yaakov doesn't want to go with him. He doesn't want Esav and his people to influence his people. He actually hid Dinah that he shouldn't see him, and they go ahead. And Yaakov settles near the city of Shechem, and unfortunately, Dinah, the daughter, is kidnapped by the man named Shechem, and she's raped and she's stuck there. And then he decides he wants to marry her. So he comes to Yaakov and he tries to negotiate that maybe we could get married to each other. And Shimon and Levi, they're fuming at what happened to their sister. So they come up with a plan. They said, we can't marry you guys unless you convert. And part of the conversion process is circumcision. If you guys circumcise yourself and want to convert, then we can get married to each other. Otherwise, no. So Hamor, the father of Shechem, says, this is a great deal. They have a lot of wealth. We'll quasi-convert and we'll be family. And they do the circumcision, not the intention of converting, but just to superficially show this. And on the third day, Shimon and Levi come to save their daughter, their sister, Dinah, and the city fights against them, and they kill out all of the men of the city, and they save Dinah. And she's saved. And Yaakov is not happy that Shimon and Levi did what they did, because they're stoking war fires here. But they said, look, we couldn't let our sister stay like this, and we did what we needed to do. And Yaakov prays, and miraculously, the nations around don't attack Yaakov and his people. And he was upset that they risked the family, but the Almighty protected him. Meanwhile, Rivka, Yaakov's mother, dies. Hashem informs Yaakov that his name is going to be Yisrael, and the land is promised to him, just like the angel had said. And Rachel dies during childbirth, and she has the last son, and his name is, anyone know the last tribe? Binyamin, correct, very good. And she's buried in Beis Lechem, known in English as Bethlehem. And to this day, Cave of Rachel, the tomb of Rachel, is in Beis Lechem. I found it to be an exceptionally powerful place to pray. And whenever we go to Israel, we go to Beis Lechem. We go there to pray. And the tomb of Rachel, and that's where she's buried, in Beis Lechem. When she dies, Ruvain takes now that Rachel was the main wife, now that she's gone, he switches the beds, and he shouldn't have done that. And the Torah looks at it as if he laid with one of Yaakov's wives, even though that's not what he did. But he's being judged harshly because what are you mixing into your father's personal business? You shouldn't be mixing in. Yaakov and Yitzchak are reunited. Eventually, Yitzchak dies, and he's buried in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah in Hebron, which is again a place that's in Israel as well. Who's there? Adam and Eve are buried there, and Avram and Sarah, and Yitzchak and Rivka, and Esav and Yaakov had to split the inheritance. So Yaakov says, "I'll give you a choice. You can have all of Yitzchak's wealth, or you could have the land of Israel and the cave of Machpelah." And Esav says, "I'll take the money." And they sign a document, and Yaakov gives all of Yitzchak's wealth to Esav for the land of Israel and for the cave of Machpelah. So now he has a reserved spot there for himself and one of his wives. And the Parsha concludes with the list of descendants from Esav. I promised you a story that I said I would end with. I was in a shul many years ago in San Diego, and they had a speaker from Israel for an organization called Zaka. Zaka is a very wonderful organization in Israel that unfortunately started out with doing work that when people died in terrorist attacks, they would come and gather the body parts to give them proper Jewish burial. Okay. Eventually, what ended up happening was they also started doing saving people, because they were like first responders, and they got there early and they were able to help people. So they were able to help people, and that's what they did. They went quickly. There's another organization, a wonderful organization named Hatzalah, that does the same thing. That does also as a first responder. One Friday afternoon, there was a girl eating a peach in Machne Yehuda. Machne Yehuda is the Jewish marketplace in Jerusalem, a bustling place. And unfortunately, she choked on the pit. And because it was Friday afternoon and there was a lot of traffic there, the Zaka people couldn't get there in time, because before Shabbos, people are buying in things and there was no room. So one of the people, Zaka, is Mr. Uri. Mr. Uri has a pizza store in Jerusalem, Uri's Pizza. It's a famous pizza store in Jerusalem on Machne, I don't remember the name of the street. And he had a meeting with his people, and they said, what could we have done to save this girl? And they said, look, what could we do? We tried to go, but we couldn't go because there was traffic. He says, let me tell you something. I have a pizza store, and my pizza has to be delivered hot to people. So we have scooters that we use. And in Israel, they use the scooters to ride on the street, on the sidewalk, over buildings, whatever. They just, it's Israel. So they use the scooters, right? And listen to the line, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. I hope I won't. He said, maybe my whole purpose in being a pizza man was so that I should know that we can use scooters to save lives. And at that point, Zaka got scooters to save lives. And now Hatzalah also has scooters. So if there's a need, they go very quickly. And when we were in Switzerland a few weeks ago for my grandson's wedding, we saw that there's a Hatzalah volunteers, and we saw that some of them have motorcycles that have like little ambulance kits on the back of them.
And so they do have medications.
They have things that they need for emergency. Yeah. Yes, they in Israel they can respond within 90 seconds usually. That they usually get to 90 seconds. So there is a Hatzalah here that also they'll respond very, very quickly. We shouldn't need it only for good things. But the line was such a good one. Maybe I became a pizza man to know that you have to deliver Pizza Hut, and we get scooters, and now we're going to use those scooters, get scooters for Zaka and as well. And that's the answer to Esav when he says, what do you need this family for? You're a spiritual man. The idea is to take all the things that we have in the physical world and elevate them. And Mr. Uri from the pizza store used his example of delivering pizza to help save lives as well. All right. Any questions, thoughts, comments? Open. The floor is open. What is that? That's not for this class. I told you, that's for the other class. You're mixing herring with borscht. You get it? That's for the level 2 to go to level 3, and we're back to level 1. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
I could just make a comment.
Go right ahead, Malcolm.
In Great Neck, we have Hatzalah.
Okay.
And very often my windows face the main street. And
Yes.
when I hear sirens, I always look out to see whether it's the fire department, the police, or Hatzalah. And
Okay.
most often it is Hatzalah that is racing to the rescue
And you know what your responsibility then is?
to give them donations.
A, and B, to say a little psalms for the person that they're going to help.
Oh, amen, amen, of course, yes.
All right. Yes. Go ahead, Hannah.
When Aesop sold the birthright
Yes.
to Yaakov,
Yes.
didn't the bracha of the report come with it, so that the bracha in fact belonged to Yaakov?
Of course. That's what I was saying, that he got the bracha, he deserved the bracha, because he was supposed to, the one who was supposed to get it. 100%. You're welcome.
What was the issue of Ruvain changing the beds? I missed the,
He wanted to elevate Leah, his mother, to a different status, because in the regular tent of Yaakov, the usual one was Rachel. He would switch off, obviously, because he
married to both.
married to all, and instead Yaakov had put a Bilhah, the maidservant from Rachel, in instead, and he was mixing in business that wasn't his. And the Torah looks at it as if he was intimate with her, but that's not what happened. It was just that he did something not appropriate for him to be involved in. His intention was to honor his mother, but it wasn't a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Rabbi,
Yes.
Did you say the story you told it, you said you were gonna tell us at the end?
I did about the will you hear what I said, the thing about the Zaka motorcycles?
Oh, okay, I missed it, I'll check with somebody else.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you afterwards, yeah. All right, everybody, have a great week. Hanukkah class coming up soon. Diane, take care, all the best. Elisheva, Malka, take care, all the best.
You as well, Rabbi. Thank you.
Man, thank you. Take care, bye-bye.
You as well. Thanks. Thank you, Rabbi.
Money is more of a custom. A lot of people get presents too, but I think money is really more of a custom.